Hello everybody, my name is Gerben de Vries and welcome to Conscious Yes, where we talk about spirituality, spiritual topics. And I think spirituality has become so important right now. And I think it's the only real game in town for real change to occur. And we haven't changed much. We haven't changed much in the last 10,000 years. There has been small changes that are mostly in the physical realm, in the outer world, where not that long ago we could not read a book without having to actually mumble the words with it, or having to even move one's own mouth. Some people still do it, they can't read without moving their mouth. But that's very petty, right? In the same way, painting perspective. Painters could not really paint in perspective, and that changed. But those are very small little changes. For instance, where psychologically, I like to ask the question, do we evolve at all over time? The psychological movements of operating, going through life, the movements of thought, the understanding of thought, of rationalism and empiricism, do these things evolve? Can we evolve by conclusions? In the same way that we evolve in the physical realm, like we can conclude that something in a car can be improved, or that it didn't work very well in a certain way, so we make improvements by conclusions. Can we do that same thing in the inner world, in the psychological realm? Or, when we conclude, we shut the door, we say we're not curious anymore. So these are very important questions, and I think to sort of explain a little bit why I think spirituality is so important is that philosophy and spirituality, philosophy, religion, even psychiatry has had its run. It had its try, and it hasn't really changed anything. And when we look around in the world, I think change is very important, because our outer world is a reflection, is a measuring stick of how we're doing inside, how our inner world is doing. Right? All the conflicts, all the wars that are out there are our internal conflicts, the competition between thoughts, the battle between evil and good, that we are internally constantly going into. So our outer world, if we look at the governments, the coercion from governments, the banking system, the monetary systems, all these, the elite that try to run the world and take advantage of the rest of us in the way of profits, more money, more power, and people that want to be slaves. So there's a lot that can change if we... It's really the challenge or the question of change, because it's a really tricky one, where we try to internalize good and bad, and where because we are the world, we think we can change the world. And this is a very tricky question. This is a very tricky idea, because we think we can change the world. We think we can look at a problem, like let's say there's hunger in Africa. Okay, so that's the problem. And then thought comes in and says, okay, buddy, I don't know how to solve this problem. The UN comes together, Bilderberg Group comes together, G20 something comes together, right? So, and they say, okay, this is how we're going to solve that problem. And in the example of Africa, we send surplus food, grains, to Africa, which puts local farmers out of business. So we see that hunger, we send food, but it destroys the agriculture in the country, because farmers can compete with free food given by other countries. Or the money goes to governments, which are all over the world incredibly corrupt and destructive and abusive, and that doesn't solve any problems. So what I'm trying to say is that out of the name of goodness, a lot of evil gets done because we do not understand good and evil. A lot of people in America, it's like a crazy number, like 90% still spank their kids, abuse their kids, using our size, our strength to dominate little children, because we think they've done something wrong, and it's in the best interest of the child to discipline in that way. He needs to know the gravity of that situation, so we spank the children, which then results into damaged children, because somebody 3 times your size, somebody that you love, beating you to shit is a horrible experience. These children then need to self-medicate when they grow up, because it impacts their serotonin, dopamine levels, their hormonal happy feeling juices. It lowers their IQ, all things like that. And so children that are abused when they grow up, they need to self-medicate. They go into drugs, they go into alcohol. So we think we're doing the right thing, but it has huge evil, let's say, repercussions. And we all know that, like in movies, how in your own life, if you've made the tiniest different decision, your life would have been completely different, right? You would not have met your wife, not have had those children, not have moved to a different country. You know all those situations, right? Where you think about, if I didn't get on that bus, I would have not been here. Even the slightest email that you sent that could have given you a job and moved you somewhere else in the world. And so we think we know the outcome of our actions. We know what good and bad is. We think that if we do this, that will fix a problem. Not understanding that the world is ourselves. So we think we know the outcome of our actions, and we judge things to be either good or bad. But really we don't know. We've just seen that the fact is, we don't know what is good or bad for something. I've gone through my suffering, and in many ways it has made me a better person. If the axiom, if let's say that life is only supposed to be a happy experience, I would not have chosen this life. But so the question is that what life is about? And so far, how comfortable are you with taking that to the extremities? The extremities of rape, of murder, of war, and 5 billion people on this planet are very badly off. It's not necessarily true. Their standard of living is very different than for the Western 1 or 2 billion. The middle class, let's say. So, good and bad on this world, how the world should look like. Hitler thought he had a good understanding of what the world should look like, and what the problems in the world is. And we all know what happened with Hitler, the Third Reich, and it was incredibly stable. And in time of a Great Depression, at that time Germany was doing incredibly well under the Nazi regime, but it has huge repercussions. And he was provoked to war left from right. Roosevelt, Stalin. It was a huge battle between a lot of agendas, claiming they all had the right agenda, right? So to know good and evil, good and right decisions has become very important, and we think we make the right decisions all the time. So philosophy comes up with ethics. If you behave this way, that's virtuous. If you do these things, these rules, which I think is incredibly, it's also again very destructive to follow that authority. Because there's no inner understanding, there's not an inner facing of one's own issues. If you follow the rule, like if you follow this way, you're completely negating your own experience. If you're evil, for crying out loud, have that evil come to the forefront, have it deal with it, do you know what I mean? And it's sociopathic to just go over it, like, and follow it, put yourself in a cube, do you know what I mean? Follow patterns of philosophical, ethical rules, pathways. So bad and good has been invented by the human mind. The human mind, let's say thought, is inherently never free, it's never new, it's fragmentary, it's limited. In itself, inherently, factually, it is those things. If you look at where thought comes from, how it moves, it is limited. Knowledge, epistemology, is limited. Look at it, it's memory. Memory is your subjective conclusion of an experience. It's very subjective, very colored by yourself, right? Whatever you've gone through, you've remembered your own. You remember with your own colored past. We're constantly looking we're constantly looking in the present through the eyes of the past, thinking we can have a different outcome in the future. It's always going to be the same thing if we continue on this way, thinking we can change the world, thinking we can change ourselves. We're treading water, right? There's no evolution in that way. And spirituality is about getting out of that loop. Looking with a fresh pair of eyes, coming from nothing. If you come from nothing, you immediately start to notice your own programming. You immediately start to notice your gullibilities, your beliefs, the things you stand on, the deck of cards that we stand on, the axioms, the things that we have agreed on to be true, which is knowledge. Beliefs we've agreed on to be true. And from knowledge, then we move. So we're constantly moving on this deck of cards, on these axioms. We move on the idea that I'm the body. The idea that there's an ego that is concrete, that is something. Okay, so trying to change the world is not wanting to face the world. Is an escapism. Not wanting to deal with the facts. The fact is that we're being controlled, we're being enslaved by taxations, that there's coercion, there's all that stuff, right? That all the governments with their institution of academia that is baloney at best, that is destroying humankind, the banking systems, the monetary system, that's all there for the purpose of keeping the status quo. And so we say that's that's bullshit. I want to change that. I want because there's anger that can arise from looking out in the world, and you're like, I want to change that. It's because it's so sad, it's so sad as well. Seeing all these people, looking around the world, it brings a huge amount of passion to want to do something. So from where do you take that action? What is your Because if you go out there and say, you go into the political system and you say it has to be libertarianism, or you say it has to be democracy that we spread around the world because that's supposedly the right thing. Patriotism, all these things that we believe to be good, because we've been told, we accept the authority on these things, what good and bad is from early on. We learn that we have to acquire the ideas of good and bad, what is right and wrong. And it's very important. It's just that we have been propagandized what right and wrong is. We don't learn to see for ourselves what right and wrong is. When we don't know how to look for right or wrong ourselves, we destroy the world. For goodness sake, a lot of evil has been done. Because we get sold things. And this is how governments work, right? They sell you something because they want to push a certain agenda. They sell you that we need to attack a certain country, and need to sell, that we need to build an army and go over there because there might be a nuclear bomb there or something like that. And we don't vote for these things. They just go out and do whatever they want, right? So we want to change the world. We want to change something. And the way we do it comes from the past. Comes from drawing conclusions from the past. Another example, because we don't want to face the facts. So when there's violence, there's drug abuse, there's the drug issue, drugs, because all these children they need to self-medicate. So the solution to that is the war on drugs, which is an evasion of the problem, right? It's an escape from the problem. It's a non-wanting to deal with the facts. If there was any care about these people doing the drugs, selling the drugs, whatever, we would look into why these people got into drugs in the first place, deal with parenting, look at the cause, look at the root of the issue, right? And we all have ideas about how we think the world should look like, how we think people should behave. And they're all very different. Some people get annoyed by other things than other people. So you get there's 7 billion views of what the world should look like, and they're all false. We don't know. So we have to find that balance, and this is where the real crucial point is, because life is happening on one level, the extreme yin. Life is happening, and that's a fact. There's no denying that. When feelings come up, that's already happened. Then thought might come in and judge it to be bad or good, right? But life, it's constantly happening to us. Our personality, our ego is always 1 second behind that. Look at the fact of that. That's the one side. That's the yin, sort of feminine, one end of the spectrum. Life is happening. There's no control, there's no decision making, there's no free will in that. Now remember, I might believe there is, but that's... So and then the other end of the spectrum, we have the complete opposite. We have more the male, ego dominant, completely surrounding oneself, very based on thought, about ideas, concept, anal retentive, factual, logical, robotic. Thinking I'm a separate identity going through the world, having to make every decision for myself. I'm breathing, my lungs, I'm not being breathed. We all know that, right? that you're somehow in control of your whole life. So they're both extremities. Here I'm being breathed by my lungs, which also happens, and here I'm breathing consciously. Two sides of the same coin. There are two extremities, there are two sides of the same freaking thing. We want to eat the cookie. We want to eat the whole cookie, but we only want to eat the top. Do you see what I mean? We want one side of the coin. We say one is good and one is bad. We say one is true and one is false. A lot of people say, yes, I'm in complete decision, I'm in complete control of my own life, my own destiny. And despise determinism. They don't like determinism, where things are determined for you, where this side, the past, is pulled from the future. There's one singularity at the end, and the past is going towards the future to one point. And which on many levels it's factually true. Because if you look at causality, there's only the present moment. That's a fact. Anything that's past or future is in our mental projections, which is not reality. It's not true. So there's only the present moment. So whatever we pull from the past is always pulled from. Do you see? Whatever we imagine, whatever we think the past was, we pull from the past. We draw conclusions to make it look like there was a causality, or it looks like there was a movement that made sense, where it adds up, where you say cause and effect. But it's not really, that's not the reality of things. Do you know what I mean? So we have on one side, life is happening. There's only the present moment. On the other side, there's the complete mental picture. I'm in control. Bruh. Serious. Life is serious. Very serious. And we need to do something, because the world is falling apart. If we don't do something, the world is going to fall apart. That's the one extremity, right? I have to go out and protest, I have to occupy, I have to send food to Africa, I have to donate money, I have to save this person because that person is much worse off than I am, all that jazz. I'm not saying that they're either wrong or right, but look at the extremities. And most people live in either or these extremities, which is the case for a lot of things. Extreme male energy or extreme feminine energy. A lot of people live in extremes, which is a whole different topic, but where's the balance? Can we see that life is happening to us, which is a fact? Look at it. Life is happening, then we come in with our conclusions, judgments, fragmentations, memorizing, measuring. And on the other hand, we also are, in our experience, a separate human being that has to go through life, make the right decisions, have an income. We need to support ourselves, be responsible, be good. And so we've made good and bad. Or we've been sold good and bad. This is how we get propagandized a lot, by good and bad. You're a bad person if you think that's, it's like the government saying, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. It's like, oh! Do you know what I mean? Good and bad. Paradox is really important. Spirituality has to do with paradox. And because you're in the middle. You're in the balance of the soul. You are there's the two sides of the coin. There's the cookie with the two sides. If we say I only want that side, we completely fool ourselves. We're completely delusional. You take one with the other. And from there, from that understanding, change will come. That's the real learning. that takes place. In that balance, it's okay to be sensitive, it's okay to be vulnerable. On the male side, vulnerability, softness, is often deemed to be bad, right? Soft man kind of thing. The extremity of male energy, you get these men that boost themselves, that lift their weights, that are very loud and obnoxious, and have a tiny little heart, right? There's no real balls behind it. There's just this tiny little person that makes a lot of noise. We all know that person. Because there's no balance with the feminine and the male energy, right? So that balance has become very important in the world. To understand that we cannot have good without evil. There are two sides of the same coin. Not to say that evil is good. Not to say that good is evil. But I guess they are. Do you know that there are two sides of the same coin? It's the same movement, it's life. And this is really important to understand. Is that we do not know good and evil. Thought lives in good and evil. It sees the opposites in the outer world. It sees the opposites in nature, light and day, dark and night. And it functions by it, the brain. That's how we interpret life. We know light because there's darkness. Plants can grow because there's dark and there's light. There's space and there's matter. There's life and death. There's ones and zeros. We only want the one. Internally, we only want the one, not the zero. We only want the light, not the dark. But life is both. They need each other. They complement each other. That's the beauty of life. It's the yin and the yang. It's the beauty of the play, the in and out, the waves going in and out, the life, the birth, and the death, the cradle and the grave. It's the play between them. It's how we notice things. It's how we notice life to be there in the first place. We wake up from an alarm. When it's completely, you can see that with babies. They fall asleep when there's a lot of noise. When it's all of a sudden silent, they wake up. When it's silent and they sleep and they hear a noise, we wake up. They're both. We need the sound and the silence, which is music. It's the beautiful play between no noise and noise. The balance is where the love of life lays. The balance is where real goodness is, because it takes you out of the opposites. You are the balance. There's thought, there's concreteness, there's something. Thought is something. It's very small. It's very male energy. Assertive. And then there's its opposite. The yin, the nothingness, the allness, the life. It's moving. It's the river. It's the water, body of water. And the beauty lies in them complementing each other, finding the balance. This is, as a human being, all we can do is find that balance, not be in those extremes. And you can be extremely happy, you can be extremely joy, you can have extreme fears, you can have extreme sadness. They're not either good or bad. They're here, and we can learn from them. We can learn from life and move on, right? We can move on. We can have that little bit of flow from the river, as well as the rationalizing and the learning from it. The mental learning is such a joy, right? Mental understanding, mental tasting of life is so beautiful. You know, it's where the pedal meets the metal, where the rubber meets the road, and where the mind, the brain, meets life, where the physical meets the psyche. That is where the joy is. That's where the real deep drinking of life is, the beauty, the immenseness, the understanding, the love and the intelligence. I hope this has been helpful to you. Let me know if you have any questions about it, if you want me to go deeper into certain explanations of things. The website is www.consciousyes.com, and thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.